Final Fantasy Type-0, the Final Fantasy game you've never heard of. Final Fantasy Type-0, originally called Final Fantasy Agito 13, was meant to be a game for mobile devices. It started development in 2006 and was part of Fabula Nova Crystallis, which is basically like a subsect of Final Fantasy games that share the same mythos. It was planned to be a mobile exclusive game, with the developers having the concept of making a mobile game equivalent to a console game, but a port for PlayStation Portable was also being developed. Eventually in 2008, the mobile game got scrapped because, well, I mean, it was 2008. And this was what phones looked like, so yeah, they got rid of it. Anyway, the mobile game got scrapped, making Type-0 a PSP exclusive. Full development began in 2008, and the game would almost get cancelled due to the majority of the team also working on a game called Eve: The Third Birthday, which was fucking horrible. But ultimately it wasn't, and would be released in 2011, later getting ports for the PS4 and Xbox One. I don't know if I got a port for Steam and shit. I didn't look that up while making the script, and I'm not going to look it up now. Alright, so Final Fantasy Type-0 is weird. It's definitely not my favorite Final Fantasy game, and I do have some complaints about the combat and other gameplay features, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it. I bought it at Christmas back in 2021, and since then it's just been sitting in my library. Like, I bought it, played it for an hour, and ever since then it's just been in the fucking back rooms. That was until a couple weeks ago when I started playing the game again. I've put a couple hours into the game, and I have a pretty good understanding of it, so consider this a review of Final Fantasy Type-0, the Final Fantasy game you've never heard of. Okay, so first thing first, I don't care for this game's story. When I first started playing the game, I was actually surprised by how much I didn't give a fuck about the story. I mean, first of all, it's a Final Fantasy game, and that franchise has a pretty good track record when it comes to stories, but also, just look at it. I mean, doesn't it look cool? Doesn't it look like a game that would have an amazing story with interesting characters and plot points? Well, that's what I thought, but I was promptly disappointed when I started playing the game. Type-0 ended up being one of those games where I loved the gameplay but skip all the cutscenes. And I mean, to be honest, I didn't even like the gameplay that much, but that's for later. Okay, so here's my really bad and bastardized summary of the plot of Type-0. So there's like a war or some going on about magic or crystals or whatever the fuck, and then there's like a school of kids that fight in a war, and in this school there's a class called Class 0, which is basically like the main class. Like, there's, I don't know, there's like class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and I think it's like 12 is the worst and 1 is the best, but then Class 0 is just a cut above the rest, you know? Shit, that rhymed. Anyway, yeah, Class 0 is the main like the main character class, and all the other classes are just filled with bums and foot soldiers and NPCs. This is the real deal class. And boom, that's all I can really tell you off the top of my head. The idea of a school which is basically training soldiers and you being in control of a class of exceptional soldiers, like, I mean, I guess students, but that's a cool concept, bro. The problem is that it's all so fucking boring. The cutscenes drag on, and the conversations just sound like fucking stereotypical military talk you see in TV shows. Here's what the conversations in Final Fantasy Type-0 sound like. It would be like, Sergeant, the enemy has fucking penetrated the city walls. Then evacuate all the citizens out of the combat zones and send in reinforcements. On it, sir. Like, bro, that's... What the fuck is that, bro? I'm not trying to watch fucking... penetrate the defense. No, our first wall of... like, shut the fuck up, bro. I swear on everything, that's like fucking 50% of the conversations. And you might be thinking, oh, sure, that's just the military stuff. Like, what about the students and their interpersonal relationships and personalities? If you are thinking that, then boy, I got some bad news for you. Before I deliver the bad news, here's something that you need to understand. Type-0 is a very short Final Fantasy game, at least story-wise. The game just kind of gives you 14 main characters to like control, and they just end up seeming kind of soulless. Like, you don't really learn much about these characters. They seem to only have surface level interactions with each other, and their personalities are pretty cliche. This guy, for example, this dude with the guns and the whatever the fuck, he is just a dumb nigga. Like, that's all he is. That's all he's just a dumb person. That's all there is to his character. So in the end, you're just left with a bunch of cool looking characters in this interesting environment, but they all end up being shallow and boring. This is actually kind of similar to the combat in how like 14 characters are just given to you, and at first they seem cool, but you soon find out there is no depth to any of them. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let's run things back a little bit. Type-0 was one of the first Final Fantasy games to use real-time combat, and you can tell by looking at its combat. Okay, now before I begin the dick riding, I gotta give the game its props. Final Fantasy Type-0 is a fun game. Like I mentioned before, the story and setting of the game also works into the gameplay in some positive and negative ways. From a story standpoint, each mission in this game is basically part of a war, and because of that, you're basically going into each level with a small army. I did not need to say basically twice. For each mission, you can choose a formation or order of what character is deployed to the field once one of your 3 currently deployed characters dies. And characters will be dying a lot. The enemies do much more damage than they would in any other Final Fantasy game, which results in you constantly swapping in new characters to take their positions. This brings in a whole new element of strategy to the game. Now in this game, there aren't any actual classes like Final Fantasy XIV for example. There is no DPS, tank, or healer, like that's just not in the game, but there are some very obvious role players. Like some characters do ranged attacks and are fast, some characters have more health but have slower, heavier hitting weapons, some characters have healing abilities but do less damage. Like there aren't any classes, but there kind of is. When you're picking your team formation, you gotta keep this in mind because you don't want to end up with 3 healing characters on the field that do no damage. But on the other hand, you also don't want 3 characters that do a lot of damage but will die very easily. Like most RPGs, it's all about balancing it out and having each character in their party make up for another character's weakness. And the class order and assignment was a great way of implementing this concept while also making it work with the story. And also, the way summons work in Type-0 is pretty cool. In most other Final Fantasy games, you're able to summon an Eidolon after being in a fight for too long or just getting your ass kicked. Or both. But in Type-0, you can summon an Eidolon at any time by sacrificing one of your characters. Yeah, I know that's pretty fucking hardcore, right? First, it may seem overpowered, and to an extent it kind of is, but if you spam it, you'll soon realize that the only characters you have left on the field are the shit ones with no synergy, and you'll promptly be annihilated by some foot soldiers. And this also plays into the whole army thing, cause like, you gotta decide if sacrificing one of your soldiers for a summon is a good decision, depending on the character, the situation, and like, the tactics, and yeah, it's cool. And now it's time to hate. Okay, so while I do stand by all the positive things I said about this game, I also think, like its story, its combat is just super fucking boring, and to be honest, just straight up bad. Like, it was fun using that slow samurai guy for a while, and using that dude with the guns, and then the dude with the cards, and I mean, yeah, that was basically it. I don't like any of the other characters, to be honest. Most of the characters feel like shit when you're attacking enemies. With some characters, like the scythe person, lady, woman, girl, it feels like you can't actually attack enemies because of how long the weapons are and how wonky her attacks are. And with some characters like this bitch with the sabers, she's just so damn unstable. Like she just flies around the place and it makes it hard to actually attack a specific enemy. With the characters where the hits do land, it just feels weak. Like most of the characters in this game have this problem where it feels like their attacks have no power behind them, and it fucking sucks. Honestly, with the exception of like 4 or 5 of them, most of the characters feel like you're just lightly tapping the enemies with your weapon. Okay, and for the last complaint, the characters have no fucking substance gameplay wise. They feel incredibly boring, and I think that's a side effect of having 14 playable main characters that you have to use for every single mission. Every character gains new special attacks and stat boosts as they level up, but a lot of the special attacks are just useless. Like there's literally no reason for me to pick it over the one I already had other than just wanting a different attack animation. For each character in the game, I reckon like 50 to 60% of their special attacks are useless, and you'll end up using a lot of the ones you started with. Once again, like the story, I think this is because they just had too much characters to deal with and give their own individual gameplay style. Like, I mean, 14 fucking characters? A Final Fantasy game from 2011 that just plops 14 characters in front of you. There's no way they were gonna give each of them distinct and fantastic gameplay with fucking unique features and weapons that... Actually, no, fuck them. There's no reason that the weapons are just fucking horrible. They just feel like pool noodles. The weapons are horrible. Side tangent, but the weapons are horrible. They look cool, but when you use them, they're horrible. Sorry for that side tangent. I just needed to get that shit off my chest. This is a very cool game, I think, but it's just... At every corner, it just disappoints me. Every time. At the end of the day, this is all my opinion, and if you think the game looks cool, then go check it out. But me personally, it's just not for me. Final Fantasy Type-0 is a cool game with a lot of cool concepts, but it just fails to deliver on every single one. But again, I don't know. It has niggas, students with weapons. Do what you want, who cares? But you know what I do care about? Final Fantasy. I've been playing a Final Fantasy 7 remake and like not been uploading. So yeah, that's something. I actually stopped playing it to play Final Fantasy 10. Which surprisingly, I enjoyed it a lot more. I don't even like turn-based combat, but I just, it shit is just busting phenomenally and stupendously independently. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I haven't posted in like 2 months, and exams finished a while ago, so I don't have an excuse. I'm just lazy. I was gonna do the Metal Gear Rising retrospective, but that's the thing about these long-ass videos. They just take a lot of commitment. And me during the summer, I'm trying to play Destiny 2 and Final Fantasy X. I don't have that kind of commitment. But who knows? I'll at least try to get back to a consistent upload schedule, like 1 or 2 videos a week. But that's, yeah, I don't know about all that. Anyway, my next one is going to be an analysis and a response to the comments from the infamous DMT. Am I high? It's going to be a response to the Dante and DMC 4 sucks video, like the comments. And yeah. I'm in Amsterdam right now enjoying life and taking a break from the 7 remake to enjoy the masterpiece that is 10. But apart from that, I don't know, new videos on the way. As always, this has been your boy Jugo Young, and I'll see you next time. Is that a fucking... Oh, damn. RIP to that spider. It has been your boy Jugo Young, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.